Anyways, it is what it is, right?
Welcome to the One Mental Breakdown Later podcast.
We're your hosts, Maria, Kait, and Mads.
Sit back, relax, and enjoy the shit show.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the One Mental Breakdown Later podcast. We are your hosts, Maria.
I'm Mads.
And
unfortunately, Kait can't join us again this week. She is too busy having the best time ever in Florida. We do miss her.
but the show must go on.
The show must go on.
So this week's episode 7, I can't believe we've done 7 episodes. Although, to be fair, we have missed a couple of weeks, but it's life. So for this week's episode, we are going to be talking about anxiety. So we're going to discuss definitions, facts, personal experiences, yada, yada.
Like almost every one of our mental health episodes, we do like to get like a little bit of background just to make sure that we're not overstepping in any way or anything like that. And looking up anxiety this week, there's a lot of different definitions. Although they're in the same realm of things, it's crazy that there's not just one set definition for anxiety.
Which is why I think there's confusion around what anxiety is. People also think they're stressed when they're in reality they're anxious, because we are not educated on mental illnesses, and that's why so many people don't come forward, because they think it's normal when it actually means that there's a chemical imbalance in their brain and they need help, and that's okay. And actually anxiety, we decided to touch on anxiety because both of us have dealt with anxiety in the past, whether it's been diagnosed by a professional or not. I think we know what anxiety looks like, and we both dealt with anxiety different, which we are gonna talk about. But it's very common, especially I think in today's society, where there's this constant pressure of in your 20s you gotta be doing this, in high school you gotta be doing this, and you compare yourself and you're pressuring yourself, hustle culture, and it all just comes blowing up in your face and you get anxious. So
I think too, you're at that age now where a lot of the anxiety comes from where you're gonna go to college, what you're gonna do after you graduate, what is your life plan. And I'm in that realm where it's all my friends are getting married, they're having babies, and it's I don't know, is that what I'm supposed to be doing? So we're both in different positions that we can kind of touch on, that we will touch on later. But I just think anxiety is very different for everybody, and that's what I want to say before we get into anything else, is that if your anxiety doesn't look like mine or look like Maria's, that doesn't devalue your situation at all. Everybody's different. Every situation is different. So this is just our personal experiences.
Yeah, and you have to remember that mental illness shows up very different in every single person. That's why it's so difficult to pinpoint exactly what's going on inside your brain, because you can't see it and it manifests itself so differently. So it's just important to remember that. And you don't need all of these symptoms in order for it to be anxiety. It could be 1, it could be 2, it could be all of them.
None of the above that
None
we
of
even
the
talk
above.
about.
Exactly.
Whatever. And I think too, a lot your body, your mind. And if you know that something is wrong, obviously we advise to go see a professional. Don't listen to just us. We're just young teenagers that don't know really what they're doing. But
no, we don't know anything. We're not
we don't know anything.
We're just raising awareness. That's it.
And speaking from experience, that's basically it. But even if you experience things that we don't talk about tonight, that doesn't mean that your anxiety is any less important than common anxiety attacks. So Maria, do you want to kind of explain what you found when you were looking up the definition for anxiety?
Yeah, I saw 2 definitions for anxiety, which again comes to show that it manifests differently and there's not one set of definition for anxiety. But one definition is the feeling of worry, nervousness, or unease, typically about an event or something with an uncertain outcome, which I feel like this definition relates a lot to maybe just stress, not necessarily anxiety, which we're gonna compare those two in a little while. And then the other definition, apparently this is what like how anxiety is defined in the psychiatry world. It is a nervous disorder characterized by a state of excessive uneasiness and apprehension, typically with compulsive behavior or panic attacks. And then you found another definition kind of similar to this last one.
Yeah, I found more medical definition
Mhm.
for it. But also I feel like as a medical definition, like I'll read it in a second, but I think it's kind of vague
Yeah.
for a medical definition. But according to WebMD, it's a feeling of apprehensiveness and fear causing physical symptoms.
Yeah. I feel like the most reliable definitions are the last two that we mentioned because both of them describe a feeling of apprehension. The only difference is that your definition also includes physical symptoms, which is very true.
It is very true. But yours also, your psychiatry one kind of goes into that as like, panic attacks and like compulsive behavior and stuff like that. I would consider them like physical
Yeah.
elements.
But sometimes, for example, in physical symptoms, you know how some people are allergic to certain foods like peanuts and their throat will close up? My allergy shows up on my skin. I don't really know what's called in English. I think it's like dermatitis, but I'm probably butchering the name because I only know the name in Spanish. But I can be like allergic to certain metals, like certain watches that I cannot use. But once that allergy is active, any negative emotion, stress, anxiety, sadness makes it act up and makes it really itchy. So that is also a physical symptom of anxiety. Like I know that I'm feeling anxious if my allergies are acting up. It doesn't have to be panic attacks. It could also be I have this like, is it called like a tick? So whenever I'm anxious, you can't see me, so I'm gonna try my best to describe what I do. But I basically kind of like in your thumb, you kind of like can pick on the skin next to your thumb, like
You
nails.
pick at your fingers.
Yeah, I pick my fingers. Yeah, my mom hates that I do that. But whenever I'm anxious, I do it unconsciously.
I'm the same way. I play with my hands. Like I just constantly have like to move my fingers in some way.
Yeah, it's like fidgeting.
Yes, it's like a fidget that I do when I'm like anxious or nervous or like don't know what to do with myself. I do that. And then so I recently just got a tattoo. It's like kind of close to the base of my thumb because like I said, I like to fidget with my fingers and my hand. And so I got Just Breathe, so that way it kind of is a reminder to just take a breath and that think things out more before I completely like compulsively do something that I probably wouldn't do. So that also helps.
So we'll go on into more of how we deal with our anxiety was once we've actually talked about this disorder a lot more. I found some signs and common symptoms. Again, you don't have to experience all of this. You may experience other symptoms, but some of the most common symptoms for anxiety is like feeling nervous constantly or feeling tense, having a sense that something is going to be wrong, having that mindset that something's going to go wrong during the day. Having an increased heart rate, that is a physical symptom that is very common. Breathing rapidly or hyperventilation, again, common physical symptom. Trembling, feeling very tired is another physical sign of anxiety, and also having trouble concentrating because you're constantly thinking about other things that are worrying you.
Are any of these common for you when you get anxiety?
Yeah, I feel like the ones that I can relate to the most is breathing rapidly, but I'm good at like catching on to that and working on my breathing and starting to count my breathing because here's the thing. Before I started dealing with like anxiety, I helped some of my friends with it because I'm captain of my volleyball team and we have this national tournament every year where we compete with other schools around the country. And it's a very high stakes competition, which makes a lot of girls anxious, obviously. And there was this one girl who basically our team and another team were like tied, and they had to count points, and they had just gotten the news that our team didn't win. So this girl got really anxious, started hyperventilating, and so I started helping her. There were literally like 5 other girls in the room. I kicked everyone out because they were just distracting her, and there was a lot of noise. And I feel like when you're dealing with anxiety and you're sensing that panic attack, the last thing you need is more commotion around you, because you need to concentrate on your breathing. So I kicked everyone out of the room, and I just told her, like, look into my eyes, breathe with me. And I started counting 1, 2, hold your breath, 1, 2, let it out, 1, 2. And then once she gained control over those 2 seconds, I started doing it every 3 seconds and every 4, and slowly like get her breathing to calm down. So because I helped her with that, when I start getting anxious now and I sense that I'm like my breathing has started to get a lot faster, I recognize it a lot quicker than maybe other people would. And I block everything out and I concentrate on slowing my breathing so that I don't get to that panic attack. So that is one symptom that I have.
When I get anxious, especially like I don't get anxious often, I will say. Like I pretty good because I'm so from like I don't go many places that I haven't been to before, but like places that I go that are new, it like freaks me out like so bad. And I definitely experienced the like something bad's gonna happen, like I don't really know what I'm doing, blah blah blah, like all that stuff. Like that is definitely me. And then I also get like super just like shaky, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
That's just like another example. Like you just said two, I just said two, but you just gave an entire list of things that can happen. Like I don't think I ever once had an anxiety attack where I was like sweating and like
No, me neither.
I was like I need to go like lay down, all that stuff. Like I've never experienced that, but like it might be common for somebody else. Like I just want to like keep reiterating that like everybody is different, everything is different. Like you said, your friend got super anxious just over a volleyball game. You know what I mean? Like it could be as simple as that, or it could be there's just so many forms of anxiety that you like there's a million reasons why it could happen.
And so many triggers. Like you just said, going to new places for you is kind of like a trigger for anxiety, whereas for me, I don't experience that. Going to new places, I don't immediately think, okay, I don't know where I'm going, this is gonna go wrong. No, I get anxious more over the fact if I'm going and I don't know anyone there. I don't like being alone with people that I don't know. But as long as I'm going with friends, I don't mind if I'm going to a new place.
Because I'm the opposite. Because like for me, I like to know like how to get out if there's a bad situation. I like to know like my surroundings, like all that stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which like mind you, I love traveling, so it's also not a great mix. But I'm the complete opposite. Like I will go up to anybody and just be like, "Hi, how are you?"
I
Or
can't
like I
do
can
that.
hang out with like a group of people I've never met.
No, I can't do that. I mean, I'm working on it, but I'm very shy with new people, and just going up to people that I don't know and starting a conversation. No, my brain immediately starts saying like, you're bugging them. They don't want you there. They don't want you to mingle in their group. Yeah, I can't do that.
I used to be really bad. Like I used to not talk to anybody. I would never like make a phone call. I know that's a big one is like people can't do
Yeah.
phone calls. I used to be like that. Like I would make my mom call for everything. And now it's more like, why not? What's the worst that can happen?
Yeah, I remember telling Caitlin when we first met, I told her, your brain is your worst enemy, because you start making up scenarios in your head and you start thinking about what other people might be thinking. And so that's why when I go up to new people or thinking about going up to new people, my brain is my worst enemy. And when in reality, they would probably be fine by me going up to them and like talking to them. But my brain tells me, no, they don't want you there.
Yeah, I agree. Like your brain is a powerful place.
Mhm.
And I say this all the time to anybody, really. Your time is so valuable, no matter what you're doing. An hour from now, something could happen to either one of us, you know?
Yeah.
Like, time is so precious, it's so valuable. And like you said, your brain is so powerful that it sometimes becomes the worst thing that could happen to you.
Because you get scared to do things and you end up losing time, wasting time.
Yes. That's crazy. Like, I was just talking to a few people that I work with, and this one girl that I work with was going skydiving for the first time this past weekend. And I was like, that sounds so much fun. Like, I would love to go skydiving. But at the same time, and I'm not afraid of heights at all, going skydiving is on my bucket list. Going ziplining through the jungle is on my bucket list. Like, I am all for it. But I know there's going to be a sense of anxiety doing that. And I know the people that do that for fun definitely still get anxious to do it. You just can't tell me otherwise.
Oh yeah. I mean, zip lining, I've done that. I mean, not in the middle of a jungle, but I've done multiple zip lines and I never got anxious because like I know I'm tied to the zip line and I won't fall. But skydiving is also in my bucket list. I feel like that would be so much fun. But if I got on that plane, the moment it would be time to jump off the plane, I would be terrified.
I
Because
feel like you just have to do it. Like, you just jump and then, like,
no,
there you
I mean
go.
the good thing is that you're like attached to like
A professional.
a professional. So it's not really up to you whether you jump or not. They just jump with you. That's a good thing because the people who do like bungee jumps off a bridge and they have to jump off themselves, nah, I'm good. Nah, but I would be terrified to jump out of the plane, even though I'm excited at the same time, but I would be terrified.
So I know you said that you helped your friend with like breathing, and like you have a good sense of it and like a good grasp of controlling your breathing when you get anxious. But is there any other like things that you do or like things that you do to take your mind off of it?
I've had only two times in my life where I've been on the cusp of having a panic attack. The first one was around March when I literally, it was my first time going to a restaurant since COVID started. So a year into the pandemic. And I was at a restaurant with my parents and it was a restaurant slash bar. And so it was very loud, a lot of people. And I just started getting anxious. I don't really remember what my thoughts were. They were like all over the place. I can't tell you I was thinking about something specifically, but I did start to hyperventilate. And what I did is I told my mom that I was starting to get anxious and to keep me in the conversation, like to get me talking. And because I didn't have the panic attack yet, it was just evolving. Being in that conversation kind of like helped me take my mind off of it. And at the same time, I was working on my breathing. And then again, with the volleyball tournaments, we have a sports psychologist come talk to us before we go on the trip. And I remember that he had told us that whenever we were feeling anxious, he gave us sort of like a tip where you put your hands together, you kind of like intertwine your fingers together, and with your thumbs, you move them around and you do kind of like a circle, move one up, and then I'm trying to describe it the best that I can, but you sort of like just do a circle with your thumbs and just kind of like that motion releases the anxiety from your body through that motion. So whenever I'm feeling anxious and I start to work on my breathing, I also work on moving around my fingers and concentrating on that. And it's sort of like a way in which the anxiety can leave your body because you're moving around. And that's why we fidget when we are anxious or stressed, because that movement, it needs, like, your body needs something to get that stress or that anxiety out, and it's through movement. And that's why we start pacing the floor. It's like a reaction of your body. So when you're thinking about it and doing it consciously, it's sort of like it also gets your mind off of it.
Yeah, it helps you focus on something else.
So that's what I do. I've done those 2 times. I've concentrated on my breathing, started counting in my head, and I started increasing the seconds in which I took a breath in, hold it a little bit, and then let it out until I slowed down my breathing, and then doing that finger motion with my hands. What about you?
Well, like I said earlier, like I got a tattoo that like I knew that I wanted for a little while now, because like I said, like I pick at my hands and I constantly I rub my knuckles together and it like breaks open my knuckles, but like when I get super anxious, like I just start like grinding my knuckles together. I know it sounds bad. It doesn't hurt as much as people think it does, but I do get bruises and stuff. So I got a tattoo that says "Just Breathe," and one of my favorite artists actually wrote the tattoo for me, so that way I could kind of think of something else, you know. So I have that, and then I actually really benefit from the fidget toys, like, you know, like the fidget spinner and stuff like that. I don't really, the popping one that just came out not too long ago, not a huge fan of that. But the fidget spinners were like super helpful. And then also just like kind of what you said is like being involved into a conversation, whether it's like if I'm alone, then I'll like call somebody, or if I'm like surrounded with my friends or whatever, I'll be like change the subject so that way I can like talk about it without actually like getting super anxious.
Yeah, I think when you're getting anxious, talking to one person, making sure that person gets your mind off of it by just having that conversations is really good. At least it helps me. And I think we should all have a fidget, a safe fidget that we can do with our hands. I sometimes, whenever I'm wearing necklaces or my bracelets, I fidget with those.
I fidget with my hair a lot. Like my hair is super long, so like I'll pull it to the front and I'll just play with my hair. Like I'll wrap it around my finger and like all this stuff, like just to, sometimes it's not even like an anxiety thing. Sometimes it's just like I don't know what I'm supposed to do with my hands.
Yeah.
So like let me just like fidget with my fingers or like my hair. Or
I feel like a lot of girls fidget with, oh well, a lot of people with long hair fidget with their hair.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Now that I think about it, I sometimes like start braiding my hair randomly. I won't put a tie on it or anything. I'm gonna let it, but I start doing braids.
It's like weird how like our minds are just like, you need to do something else. Like it's basically it like your brain's way of being like, you need to do something else right now, because if not, then it's going to be a mental breakdown. When we were like looking things up for anxiety this week, I actually read on this website, it's Anxiety and Depression Association of America. They were saying that like anxiety is super treatable, but only about like 32% of people actually like get help for anxiety.
You want to know why I think only 32% of people get treated for anxiety?
Why?
2 reasons. One, they know they're anxious, but admitting it and going to a psychologist or a professional, they have this misconception that it makes them weak. So they're scared to ask for help, like any other mental illness. But another reason, which I think it's a bigger reason, is they don't know they have anxiety and they think they're just stressed, which is why I want to compare stress and anxiety. And we're going to go into it in a little bit, but I think having this clear difference between what's stress and what is anxiety will help more people recognize it and go and get treated, because it's very easy to treat it.
Right. Which I also think it's super weird too, because I know like personally for me, sometimes I'll get like anxiety attacks and I have no idea why. Like I'm doing the same thing that I do most days, like at my house or hanging out with my friends or whatever. And I'll just be like, no, like I'm getting anxiety. And they'll be like, well, what's wrong? And I'm like, I have no idea.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of like, at least personally for me, is a separation between like stress and anxiety. Because if I'm stressed, I'll be like, okay, well, I know I have a test and I have work, and I have this, this, and this, and then I get super like annoyed and I start, I'm like, I don't have time for all of this. And I kind of like dwindle in my thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
But like if I'm anxious, sometimes like I said earlier, sometimes I do know like if I'm going to a new place or I am not familiar with what's going on, stuff like that, I know I get anxious, but then there'll be sometimes when I just get anxiety and I'm like, I don't even know what's happening. Like, why is this happening?
I've had those moments where everything is fine, and then all of a sudden I'm like, I want to cry. I don't know why. What's going on?
That's probably the biggest mood that anybody has said on this entire podcast. I just want to cry and I don't know why.
Don't know why, but I have a feeling I need to cry right now.
So
Sometimes
what
I
would
do
you
know
say
why.
is like your difference or like how you differentiate stress and anxiety?
I think it's the same thing. Stress, I know why I'm feeling that way is because I have an assignment, because there's drama in my friend group, because I'm applying to college. Like I can pinpoint the event that is stressing me out. But anxiety, sometimes I'll be able to know what's causing me anxiety, like being in a restaurant for the first time since COVID started. A lot of people were there, so it was kind of like my introvert self with a lot of people and social anxiety mixed with scared of COVID, but at the end of the day it was anxiety. I identified the trigger, but I can't always identify the trigger. Sometimes I'm feeling a little bit off. I'm not feeling myself, which I think is kind of anxiety manifested in a different way, not necessarily hyperventilating, but I'm just not feeling myself and I don't know why. I think the biggest way to tell that it's anxiety is when you're just asking yourself, why am I feeling like this? There's nothing going on in my life that's making me feel like this.
Yeah, I agree. Like I said, it's a weird concept to kind of grasp around because you don't really, there's no like straightforward answer. Like if you have a cold, you know that you need to take medicine, you need to know that you need to rest, all this stuff. Like it's very straightforward. You know how to treat it and it's done and over with. With anxiety, there's so many different factors that it's like crazy to think about. Like there's not one right answer.
Nope. Since we're already on the topic of stress and anxiety, do you just want to go into comparing it with the information that we got over the week?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So again, cause or origin of anxiety is very different from stress because stress is when it's a response to a recognized threat. It's a response to I don't know, for example, I'm meeting my significant other's parents tonight. I'm stressed. I have a midterm tomorrow. I'm stressed, etc. Whereas with anxiety, there may or may not be an identifiable trigger. It can be something that happened 3 weeks ago and now you're feeling this way, but since that event happened 3 weeks ago, you don't really correlate them to one another, but it's just your body dealing with that event a little bit later. Or it might just be that you're overwhelmed with everything and you can't exactly pinpoint what is causing you anxiety because it's actually everything causing you anxiety. Or you might be able to know what it is, like you, Madison, that going to a new place will cause anxiety. So it's really a lot of things that can trigger it and is not always identifiable.
I think going off of the example that you just gave was a really good one because if you take like meeting your significant other's parents for the first time, you could get like super stressed, like what do I wear? Will they like me? And you're just stressed in your head, like I need to make a good first impression.
Mm-hmm.
But like anxiety is way longer than that. Like after you meet it, like their parents and say like everything goes well, you're still in your head like, are you sure that they liked me? Did I say something that I shouldn't have? Stuff
Mm-hmm.
like that. Like I feel like anxiety kind of prolongs itself, whereas stress is like, okay, that dinner's done, it's over with, it went well, and I'm fine now. Like
Yep.
that I think is a big thing.
No, yeah, that's a good example because actually the span or the lifetime of these emotions is very different. Stress is short term, anxiety lingers and builds up. And personally, anxiety also relates to me a lot with overthinking, because as you said, 2 weeks go by and you're still thinking about, wait, I made that joke. Did they actually laugh or they did not like it? Wait, I did this. Wait, I should have done that. Wait, when they did this, what did they mean about it? And it's just anxiety building up and lingering. And it can be very subtle at first. And then all of a sudden, it will build up. The cup will be full of water and it will just spill and you will have the breakdown.
I also think too, like I at least personally, I am not one that shows a lot of emotion.
Same.
So like if something kind of stresses me out, I'll put it on the back burner and like do what I have to do.
Mhm.
And then that stress kind of builds up, almost like you said, like a cup completely overflows. And then I will just have an anxiety attack out of nowhere. But really, it's like 50 things that I should have dealt with that I didn't deal with. And sometimes it's like I should get it out, but I don't.
Yeah, same. I think it's very common for people to put off dealing with emotions because it's hard. It's hard. You don't want to cry. You don't want to feel that hurt. So you just turn it off. Think about something else. But eventually you need to deal with it. And eventually it'll just hit you like a million bricks. And it's going to be terrible. That happened to me recently.
Also, if you guys want more information, Maria got the stress versus anxiety thing
But
on medical news today. So if you type that in and on Google, I'm sure that it will pop up for you.
it's a
They give
picture.
you yeah, they give you a whole list and like different diagrams and stuff like that. Obviously, we're not going to go back into symptoms, but yeah, if you want more information on that, you could totally Google it and I'm sure it will come right up.
This is
Yeah.
interesting though. We're not going to talk about all of the symptoms, but this is interesting. A symptom of stress is anxious thoughts. And anxious thoughts is not a symptom of anxiety, according to medical news today. That's interesting though, that you get anxious thoughts when you're stressed makes sense, but why not when you're having anxiety? You can. I'm not saying that you can't, but it's interesting that that's why we get them confused sometimes, because you have anxious thoughts even when you're just stressed.
I think it comes down to time.
Mm-hmm.
I think if your anxious thought lasts like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, maybe even a few hours,
You're
then
stressed.
it's more likely stress. Not saying that if you were anxious for only a few hours and then you're good, like not saying or discrediting the fact that you did have anxiety. I'm just saying I personally think it comes down to the time and like if you're good, you had an anxiety attack and then 20 minutes later you're good, but it comes down to are you going to think about it 2 weeks from now? Cuz if you're going to think about it 2 weeks from now, it probably was more anxiety based than it was stress based.
True. I think the telltale sign is if it's long term or not.
Yeah, I agree.
You found another fact about anxiety.
Yeah, it's actually the most common mental illness in the United States. I don't know about Mexico. Maria represents Mexico, but that's crazy that it's the most common mental illness, but there's no like set in stone thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's a billion different definitions for it, there's a billion different things to treat it. There's so many different like signs and symptoms and basically everything we've been talking about, and it's the most common mental illness and we still don't have a good grasp on it, which I think is absolutely crazy.
I'm just looking it up right now because you mentioned Mexico. It's in the top three, I think, worldwide. But in Mexico, it says that anxiety disorders were the most common with a 14.3%. And then the other single most prevalent disorder in Mexico is alcohol abuse and depression. So anxiety is common in every country because there's a lot of triggers. Everything is triggering. And if you're stressed about one thing, maybe it can be money, work, school, which is things that we deal on a day-to-day basis. That stress starts to linger and turns into anxiety. Whereas with other mental disorders or illnesses like depression or ADHD, And, ADD and ADHD, not everybody's brain is wired that way. So it might be less common. Depression, not everybody's brain is wired that way. So not everybody gets triggered enough to have that chemical imbalance happen. But anxiety, whereas it is a chemical imbalance, it comes from stress that everybody deals with on a day-to-day basis. So that's kind of like my understanding on why it might be the most common disorder worldwide.
I also think the media has a lot, and I know we always go back to the media. It's always the damn media, but
because it's 2021, Madison. We spend 12 hours on our freaking phone, on Twitter, Instagram.
Social media it's great. You know what I mean? Like we met, three of us met through social media.
I love how I said horrible and you said great at the exact same time.
No, that's what I'm getting at. Like it is great. There are pros to social media, and I think we've talked about this plenty of times that social media can be fun and it can bring people together, and you kind of see that in numbers you're not always alone. With that being said though, there's also a lot of anxiety and stress that comes with social media. Like I know personally for us, like just a small ounce of stress is, are we going to have a podcast this week? Are we not? Did I post enough on Instagram to get enough likes? Did I post enough on TikTok to keep my numbers going up? And it's just like that always constant anxiety that you want to be consistent, you want to be great, you want to, do all this, that, and the other, keeping up with trends. And it doesn't help to the workload that people already have, which is like school, work, friends, family. Like it just piles on. Social media is your happy-go-lucky profile, if you will, your good moments portfolio of things. And I think so many people are just so clueless. And like I know that sounds a lot harsher than like I intend it to be, but like a lot of people are so clueless to the fact that like not everybody is walking around with a filter on their face. There was again, like the more I talk about different topics on here, the more it'll always come back to musical artists. But
you don't say.
There's a musical artist that I follow, and he started like going back to the gym, and as a joke like put on his Instagram, he's like, I guess I can't go to the gym if I don't post that I'm at the gym. So he now like every time he goes to the gym posts a picture, because he's like, my daily gym check-in. And I know like you're big into working out, and I don't see you posting about the gym. So it's just like, it's funny how people don't always believe you if it's not on social media. Or like, that saying that used to go around like pics or it didn't happen. And it's like everything revolves around that, which then like I know people that they'll get so anxious if they don't take a picture of their food before they eat it. And then once they eat it, they're like, oh my gosh, I never took a picture of it. And you're just like,
and
what? What?
Yeah. Oh, there's so many people that go to the gym, take the picture, do 5 push-ups and leave, which you do you. You do you.
I'm like, because like I'm gonna expose all of you.
I'm gonna pull up names. I mean, you do you, but don't make me or others feel bad that we're lying on our beds with ice cream watching Netflix when you're out here pretending to work out. Like it's again FOMO, and comparing yourself manifests in stress, anxiety, and depression.
But I don't know.
Sucks. We'll always come back to social media because we're Gen Z.
Yeah, we grew up with social media, so it kind of messed us all up.
Yep.
I'm ready to wrap this thing up if you are.
Yeah.
I hope that you guys learned maybe some breathing techniques that Maria was talking about, how you put your fingers together. I hope you realized a little bit more that anxiety is more common than you think it is.
And
So
it's okay.
It is okay.
Okay to have anxiety. I know there's this taboo around it and you're weak or whatever, but it's okay to have anxiety. We all have it. We just don't want to admit it. It's okay. The sooner that you recognize it, the better it will be long term, because you'll know how to deal with it. It's not your enemy. It's just a way that your body's telling you that something is off. You don't have to be ashamed or anything. You can talk about it with your friends, with your family. It's okay.
Or
That's,
if you don't have anybody to talk to
you can
and
DM
you want,
us.
yeah, DM us and one of us will get back to you. There's 3 people, so I hope one gets back to you.
Yeah.
But just know that this space is always a judge-free zone, and we're just creating a community that is here to uplift each other and not judge each other for what is going on, because like we have said almost in I think every episode is you don't know what anybody's going through. If
Mm.
you can't see it, that doesn't mean that it's not there. And
Mhm.
so I think if you do want to be a part of our community, you want to help raise mental health awareness, just be that person for somebody else and understand that sometimes people don't want to talk about it like right away, and that's okay. But don't just drop it, because you're going to be a better person if you push somebody a little bit to kind of open up and not be left alone with their thoughts.
Yeah, you can DM us on Instagram to the podcast Instagram, which is the same name as the podcast, One Mental Breakdown Later Pod, or even DM us personally. I mean, our personal ads, we don't mind. So thank you for listening to this episode. I hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for sticking along. Those who have been with us for 7 episodes now. If you this is the first episode you've listened to, go ahead, check out the other ones, and subscribe or follow us to get notified each time we upload another episode, and join this community.
We will see you next time.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.